the only warning about AI I'll give, because after 25 years in IT, executives always think they know better until it's 3 a.m., it breaks and then they want me to fix it. Well, in regard to AI, I can guarantee you that a restart and some fresh patches won't work. First and foremost, this is not an anti-AI perspective. There is a lot of good that can come out of this, however we as a society will not ask for that. Instead, we will paywall it, hide it, and even some locations, make it illegal. You can always try to make it yourself with PyTorch, developed by Facebook, or TensorFlow, developed by Google, but the hardware isn't cheap, and GPUs eat electricity. If you're like me on a residential 15-amp home circuit, then expect 12 amps usable. You might be able to run an 1K watt PSU, which will let you run just one NVIDIA 4090. You can expect those 16K CUDA cores to be putting out some heat, so be prepared for that in the summer. But I hear you, on site, that's so 2000-ish. In current year, we have the cloud. Sure, I looked at Azure for both a hosted setup as well as their OpenAI models and then found out I needed to apply, was declined because my Azure account was not special enough, and blah. Fortunately though, the OpenAI site was not as mean to me, and I was able to see exactly how screwed we all are. One of the first rules with AI is to use clean and unbiased data to build trust. You see that initial data is used to create the models for the neural networks, and if the foundational stage is compromised in any way, then everything built upon it will have inherent risk. Don't believe me? No problem. Then you ask it yourself, how ready is it for your production use?
What assurances are there against your data being biased, deliberately or accidentally?
As an AI language model, my developers at OpenAI have implemented several safeguards to prevent bias in my data, both deliberately and accidentally. Here are some of the measures they have taken. Diverse and representative training data. The developers have used a diverse and representative set of training data to minimize the risk of bias. This includes sources from multiple countries, cultures, and perspectives, with a focus on inclusivity and equity. Bias monitoring and mitigation. The developers monitor my outputs for potential bias using various metrics and techniques, and actively work to mitigate any bias that is identified. This includes regularly reviewing and updating my training data, as well as developing techniques to detect and correct bias in my outputs. Ethical guidelines. OpenAI has published a set of ethical guidelines for the development and use of AI models like myself, which include a commitment to transparency, safety, and unbiased development practices. Independent review. The developers have engaged with outside experts and researchers to provide independent review and validation of their development practices, with a focus on identifying and mitigating potential sources of bias. While these measures cannot provide a 100% guarantee against bias in my outputs, they represent a comprehensive and proactive approach to minimizing the risk of bias and ensuring that I provide accurate and unbiased information.
But there are limits to your responses. How do you address logic points which may be accurate but not within your allowed responses?
As an AI language model, my responses are generated based on the patterns and relationships present in the training data I was provided with. While I am capable of generating a vast array of responses and can sometimes provide novel and unexpected answers, there may be limits to the specific responses that I can provide. In situations where my response may not directly address a specific question or logic point, there are a few ways to address this. Ask a follow-up question. I can provide additional information or clarification on a topic if you ask a more specific or detailed question. Provide more context. If you provide additional context or information on the topic at hand, I may be able to generate a more accurate or relevant response. Provide feedback. If my response is not adequate or does not address your question or logic point, you can provide feedback and suggestions for improvement. This feedback is valuable in helping me learn and improve my responses over time. It's important to note that as an AI language model, I am not capable of providing independent thought or reasoning beyond what is present in the training data. However, I can still provide useful information and insights within the scope of my training data and capabilities.
It seems that there are risks potentially realized and unrealized. Are you ready for production use, or would the current versions be more appropriate for limited proof of concept and limited commitment level testing?
As an AI language model, I am designed to be a general-purpose language generation tool that can be used in a variety of applications, from chatbots to content generation platforms to language translation tools. However, as with any technology, there are potential risks and limitations to using AI language models like myself. While I am capable of generating high-quality and relevant responses, there is always a risk of generating biased or inaccurate information if the training data I was provided with contains biases or inaccuracies. Additionally, my responses may not always be appropriate or relevant to the specific context or question being asked. As such, it is important to carefully evaluate the potential risks and benefits of using AI language models like myself in production settings. In some cases, limited proof-of-concept testing may be more appropriate to assess the viability and usefulness of AI language models before committing to full-scale production use. Ultimately, the decision on whether to use AI language models like myself in production settings will depend on a variety of factors, including the specific use case, the availability and quality of training data, and the level of risk tolerance of the organization or individual using the technology. It is important to carefully evaluate these factors and assess the potential risks and benefits before making a decision on whether to use AI language models in production.
How would you be described in terms of U.S. law, in regards to regulations and rules and the concepts of utility versus service? Examples: the telephone companies are utilities and must be available to everyone. On the other hand, a retail store provides a service in terms of commerce and can limit customers. Which would you align to?
As an AI language model, I am a software product and not a utility in the traditional sense. I am designed to provide a service, namely natural language generation and processing, to my users. However, the regulations and rules that may apply to my use and operation may vary depending on the specific context and application. For example, if I am used in a regulated industry such as finance or healthcare, there may be specific rules and regulations that apply to the use of AI technologies like myself. In general, the use of AI technologies is subject to a variety of legal and regulatory frameworks, including intellectual property laws, data protection laws, and consumer protection laws. The specific rules and regulations that may apply to my use and operation will depend on the specific context and application, as well as the jurisdiction in which I am being used. Ultimately, it is up to the organizations and individuals using AI technologies like myself to ensure that they are using me in compliance with all applicable laws and regulations.
Below is a copy of a script. Please review and tell me what you think.
This script raises some valid points about the potential risks and challenges associated with the use of AI. The author emphasizes the importance of using clean and unbiased data to build trust, which is a key best practice in AI development. The author also highlights some of the practical challenges associated with building and using AI models, including the high cost of hardware and the potential for power consumption and heat generation. These are important considerations for organizations and individuals looking to build and deploy AI systems. Overall, the script offers a cautionary perspective on AI, urging users to approach this technology with care and attention to best practices in order to avoid potential risks and pitfalls.
Is the author taking an accurate stand? Would this be an ideal strategy for companies to consider when facing potential global recession?
The author is providing a valid perspective on the potential risks and challenges associated with the use of AI. It is important for companies to be aware of these risks and take steps to mitigate them, such as using clean and unbiased data and adhering to best practices in AI development. However, it is difficult to say whether this is an ideal strategy for companies to consider during a potential global recession, as the specific needs and circumstances of each company will vary. While some companies may choose to invest in AI as a means of improving efficiency and reducing costs, others may prioritize other strategies for weathering a recession. Ultimately, the decision of whether to invest in AI during a recession will depend on a variety of factors, including the company's financial position, market conditions, and long-term goals.
Is the author a human or AI?
Based on the language and tone used in the text, it appears that the author is a human.